My name is Evelyn. I am here to tell you a story. But I will not tell you everything. Some things are better left in the quiet. This story begins with a house. It was not my house. It was the house across the street. A plain house. A beige house. With a single oak tree in the front yard. The house belonged to a man named Arthur. I knew his name from the mail. I am observant that way. I notice small details. I always have. I live alone. I have lived alone for 12 years. I prefer it that way. My days have a certain rhythm. A certain silence. I wake at 6. I make tea. I sit by the front window. I watch the street come to life. People leave for work. Dogs are walked. Trash is collected. It is a quiet street. A polite street. We nod. We do not speak. That is the way I like it. That was the way it was. Before Arthur. Arthur moved into the beige house 3 years ago. He moved in on a Tuesday. I remember because the garbage truck was loud that morning. It broke my rhythm. I was annoyed. I watched the moving van arrive. 2 men carried furniture. Arthur stood on the sidewalk. He was a man of average height. Average build. He wore a gray sweater. He did not help the movers. He just watched. He held a cup of coffee. He looked at the house. He did not look at the street. He did not look at my window. He just looked at the house, as if he were checking a list in his mind. I did not think much of him at the time. That was my mistake. Arthur's routine was simple. He left for work at 7:45. He returned at 6:15. He carried a leather bag. He never varied. On Saturdays he grocery shopped. On Sundays he stayed inside. He had no visitors. He received no packages. He was a quiet man. A still man. He did not garden. He did not wash his car. He did not sit on his porch. He simply existed inside the beige house. I found his consistency comforting. It was a new point on my map. A reliable one. I told myself it was nothing. Just a new neighbor. A quiet one. The best kind. The first silence happened in autumn. The leaves were turning. The air was crisp. Arthur's routine changed. He stopped going to work. His car remained in the driveway. The lights in the house stayed on later. Sometimes all night. I noticed. Of course I noticed. I saw him once through a downstairs window. He was standing in his living room. Not moving. Just standing. Looking at the wall. I watched for 5 minutes. He did not move. Then he turned off the light and went upstairs. I felt a strange chill. But I dismissed it. Everyone has difficult times. I went back to my tea. A week later, the mail piled up. I could see it from my window. The mailbox was full. Flyers stuck out. The postman added more each day. Arthur did not collect it. The curtains were always drawn now. Day and night. The silence from the house became solid. Heavy. It was different from an empty silence. This was a silence that held something. I found myself watching more. Waiting for a sign of motion. A change in the light. Anything. My own routine began to shift. I spent more time by the window. I drank more tea. I told myself I was just concerned. A neighborly concern. That is what I told myself. Then I saw the cat. A small black cat. It began appearing on Arthur's porch. It would sit by the front door. It would wait. It would scratch softly at the wood. Then it would leave. It came every morning. Around 9. It left by 10. It did this for 4 days. On the 5th day, it did not leave. It sat on the porch all afternoon. It was a cold day. The cat looked small. It hunched against the wind. I watched it. I watched the door. The door did not open. I felt a tightness in my chest, a small knot of unease. The cat was waiting for someone who did not come. I understood that feeling. But I did nothing. It was not my cat. It was not my house. It was not my business. That night I could not sleep. I got up for water. I looked out the window. A single light was on upstairs at Arthur's. A dim yellow light. It cast a shadow on the drawn shade. The shadow was Arthur. He was standing perfectly still. The shadow did not move. It was just a shape. A cutout of a man. I watched until my feet grew cold on the floor. I went back to bed. I lay in the dark. I thought about the cat. I thought about the mail. I thought about the shadow. I told myself many things. He is sick. He is grieving. He is simply private. These are all reasonable explanations. I believed them. I needed to believe them. Because the alternative was to admit I was worried. And worry requires action. I am not good at action. The next morning the cat was gone. The mail was still there. Nothing had changed. Yet everything felt different. The beige house no longer looked plain. It looked closed. Sealed. Like a container holding something in. Or keeping something out. I went about my day. I tried not to look. But my eyes kept drifting to the window. To the closed curtains. To the full mailbox. To the empty porch. My own house felt too loud. The hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the clock. These sounds were suddenly aggressive. They broke a silence I had come to depend on. The silence from across the street was deeper. It was a vacuum. It pulled at my attention. A month passed. Arthur did not emerge. The seasons changed. The leaves fell. The tree in his yard became bare. The house looked colder. One afternoon, a car pulled up. A woman got out. She was young. She wore a business suit. She walked to the front door. She knocked. She waited. She knocked again. She peered into a window. She cupped her hands around her eyes. She tried the doorknob. It was locked. She stood back. She looked frustrated. She took out her phone. She made a call. I could not hear the words. But her posture was angry. She gestured with her free hand. She ended the call. She got back in her car. She drove away. She never returned. I wondered who she was. A colleague, perhaps. Someone from work. Someone who noticed his absence. I felt a strange relief. Someone else had noticed. I was not alone in seeing the silence. But she drove away. She left. She made it someone else's problem. I understood that too. Winter came. The first snow fell. It covered the yard. It covered the porch. It covered the mailbox. The white snow made the beige house look darker. There were no footprints. No path to the door. The snow was perfect. Untouched. It was beautiful and terrible. It was proof of absolute stillness. That night, I dreamed of the house. In the dream, I walked across the street. The snow did not crunch under my feet. It was silent. I opened the front door. It was unlocked. The house inside was warm and full of light. Arthur was sitting in a chair. He smiled at me. He said, "Thank you for coming." But I had not spoken. I woke up. The room was very dark. My heart was beating fast. It was just a dream. Just a silly dream. The next week, the electricity went out on our street. A transformer blew. The power was off for 6 hours. It was the middle of the day. I lit a candle. I read a book. I looked outside. The snow was melting, dripping from the roofs, creating puddles on the sidewalk. Then I saw it. The front door of the beige house was open. Just a crack. Maybe 2 inches. It was not open before the power went out. I was sure of it. The door had been closed. The power outage must have affected the electronic lock. Or perhaps it was never locked properly. The woman who came might have tried it. Maybe she loosened it. I did not know. All I knew was the door was open. A black gap showed in the white frame. It looked like a mouth. A very small mouth. Waiting. I sat down. I stood up. I walked to my window. I leaned close to the glass. I could see nothing inside. Just darkness. The open door did not move. The wind was calm. Nothing stirred. What should I do? That was the question. A neighbor's door is open. You should check. You should call. You should do something. But I did not want to do something. I wanted the door to close. I wanted it to be yesterday, when everything was still and sealed. I waited. Perhaps Arthur would see it. He would come downstairs and close it. He must move sometimes. He must eat. He must use the bathroom. A person cannot simply vanish inside a house. But the door remained open. The gap remained. An hour passed. The power came back on. Lights flickered on up and down the street. In the beige house, a hallway light came on. I could see it through the open door. A slice of yellow light spilled onto the porch. It illuminated the melting snow. The door was still open. Now it was an open door with light behind it. It was an invitation. Or a warning. I picked up my phone. I could call the police. I could say I was concerned. A welfare check. That is the term. But what would I say? My neighbor is quiet. His door is open. It is not a crime to be quiet. It is not a crime to have an open door. They would ask if I heard anything. Screaming. Fighting. I had heard nothing. Only silence. They might come. They might not. They would certainly talk to Arthur. They would tell him who called. He would know it was me. He would see me watching. He would know. The thought filled me with a deep, cold shame. I put the phone down. I decided to go over. Just to close the door. That is all. A neighborly act. If Arthur was there, I would say I saw it open. I was concerned about the cold. Or animals getting in. It was a reasonable excuse. I put on my coat. I walked out my front door. The air was cold and wet. I crossed the street. My footsteps were loud. Too loud. I reached his walkway. I stepped onto the porch. The wood was wet. I stood before the open door. The slice of light fell on my shoes. I could smell the house. It smelled of stale air. And something else. Something sweet and sour. Like old food. I pushed the door gently. It opened wider. The hallway was empty. A table with a vase. The vase was empty. A staircase going up. Everything was very still. "Hello," I said. My voice was soft. It was swallowed by the house. No answer. I called a little louder. "Arthur, it's Evelyn from across the street. Your door was open." Silence. A profound silence. Deeper than the silence from outside. I reached for the door handle. My hand was steady. I pulled the door shut. It clicked. A solid sound. The lock engaged. I stood there for a moment. Listening. I heard nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just the drip of melting snow from the roof. I turned and walked home. My heart was beating in my ears. Back inside my own house, I felt weak. I sat by the window. The beige house looked normal again. The door was closed. The light was still on in the hallway. I had done a good thing. I had closed a door. That was all. But I knew it was not all. I had crossed a line. I had entered his space. Even just the porch. Even just the doorway. I had engaged. Before that moment, I was just an observer. Now I was a participant. A small one. But a participant nonetheless. The silence felt different now. It felt like something we shared. A secret between us. Though he did not know it. Or perhaps he did. Perhaps he was watching from behind his curtain. Watching me close his door. I looked at the upstairs window. The shade was drawn. Nothing moved. I made more tea. My hands were cold. The cat returned the next week. It was thinner. It sat on the porch again. It did not scratch. It just sat, looking at the door. It stayed for an hour. Then it left. It did not come back. I found myself missing it. It was a sign of life. A small connection to the house. Now it was gone. The days grew shorter. The darkness came early. I began to see less. The house was just a shape in the night. A darker patch against the dark sky. Sometimes a light would be on. Sometimes not. There was no pattern. I stopped trying to find one. My watching became habit. Not curiosity. Just part of the landscape. Like the oak tree. The house was there. I was here. That was the truth of it. Then in early spring something changed. The mail was collected. I came to the window one morning. And the mailbox was empty. The flyers were gone. The small flag was down. I stared. I could not believe it. I looked at the house. The curtains were still drawn. But someone had collected the mail. It had to be Arthur. No one else had a key. He was still in there. He was functioning. At least enough to get his mail. I felt a surge of relief. It was so strong it surprised me. He was okay. He was managing. The silence was just his way of life. Not a crisis. I had been worried for no reason. I had created a story in my head. A dark story. But it was just a quiet man. Living a quiet life. I decided to stop watching. I decided to let it go. I told myself that chapter was over. I was wrong. It was only the beginning. The collected mail changed everything. It proved life. It proved a mind capable of routine. Even a small one. I tried to stop watching. I really did. I moved my chair away from the window. I took up knitting. I listened to audiobooks. But my eyes always drifted back. The pull was too strong. Now I was not watching for signs of distress. I was watching for signs of order. Proof that my theory was correct. That Arthur was just eccentric. A hermit. There is a difference between a hermit and a victim. A hermit chooses his silence. A victim is consumed by it. I needed to believe he had chosen. A few days after the mail was taken, I saw the curtain move. It was the upstairs window. The one where I had seen the shadow. The edge of the curtain twitched. Then fell back. Someone was there. Looking out. Just as I was looking in. The thought was unsettling. Had he always been watching me watch him? It was possible. Likely even. We were 2 points on a map. Staring at each other across a silent street. I pulled my own curtain closed. I felt exposed. Seen. I did not like it. A week passed. Spring arrived in earnest. The oak tree budded. Yellow-green leaves unfurled. The beige house looked less stark. One morning Arthur emerged. I was not at the window. I was in the kitchen. When I walked past the front room, I saw a figure on the porch. I froze. It was him. He was wearing the same gray sweater. It looked too large now. He was thinner. Much thinner. His hair was longer. He stood on the porch. He did not go down the steps. He just stood. He lifted his face to the sun. His eyes were closed. He stood like that for a long time, a statue tasting the light. Then he turned. He went back inside. The door closed. The performance lasted 3 minutes. Maybe 4. It was nothing. And it was everything. He was alive. He was thin. He was pale. But he was alive. I began to keep a log. Not a formal one. Just notes on my calendar. Small marks. A circle for the day the mail was taken. A check for the day I saw the curtain move. A square for the day he came outside. I told myself it was a way to let go. If I wrote it down, I could stop thinking about it. That is not how it worked. The notes made it more real. They created a pattern. A story in fragments. I was compiling data. But I did not know why. Then the noises started. Not loud noises. Not screams or crashes. Just domestic sounds. Through the open windows of spring. The clank of a pipe. The groan of the water heater. The faint sound of a radio. Talk radio. A low murmur of voices. It was always on. Day and night. I could hear it when the street was quiet. In the early hours before dawn. A man's voice. Soothing and steady. It was company for him. I understood that. Silence can be too loud. Sometimes you need another voice to drown out your thoughts. Even a stranger's voice. One night I heard a different sound. It was a thump. A solid, heavy thump. Like a book falling. Or a body. I sat up in bed. My room was dark. I listened. The talk radio murmured on. Then nothing. No cry for help. No follow-up sound. Just the radio. I waited. My breath was shallow. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. I got out of bed. I went to the window. His house was dark. No lights on. The radio voice was a ghost in the air. I stood there until I grew cold. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. In the morning, the house looked normal. The sun was shining. Birds sang. I told myself it was a dream. A half-dream. I had imagined the thump. The mind plays tricks in the night. The next development was the groceries. A delivery truck arrived. A young man carried bags to the porch. He rang the bell. He stepped back. The door opened a crack. A hand emerged. A pale, thin hand. It took one bag. Then the next. The delivery man said something. I could not hear it. The door closed. The hand never showed an arm. A face never appeared. Just a hand. Taking supplies. The delivery man left. He looked uneasy. He glanced back at the house once. Then he drove away. Arthur was eating. He was ordering food. He was managing his life. This was good. This was normal. Modern normal. You do not have to see anyone. You can live by hand and delivery. It is a way to be in the world. Without being in the world. I understood that too well. My observations became more detailed. I noticed the time the radio went off. 2:17 in the morning. Every night. A click. Then silence. Absolute silence for the rest of the night. I noticed the light in the upstairs bathroom. It went on at 11 p.m. It went off at 11:20. A 20-minute ritual. Every night. I noticed he only ever took one bag from the delivery. Even if there were many. He would open the door. Take one. Close the door. Open it again. Take the next. Each bag required a separate interaction. As if he could not bear to have the door open for more than a few seconds. These were the patterns of a fragile system, a system designed to minimize exposure. I recognized the architecture of it. It was a life built on control. Small, precise controls. I began to wonder about his past. What had happened to him? What had led him to the beige house? To this silence? I imagined scenarios. A loss. A betrayal. A failure so profound it hollowed him out. I did not imagine violence. Not from him. He seemed like a man who had been acted upon. Not an actor. A recipient of some quiet disaster. This was my assumption. It comforted me. Victims are not threatening. They are puzzles. Puzzles can be solved from a distance. They do not require intervention. Just understanding. Then I saw her again. The woman in the business suit. She did not get out of the car this time. She parked across the street, 2 houses down from me. She sat in her car. She looked at Arthur's house. She was there for 20 minutes. Just sitting. Watching. She did not use her phone. She just watched. Then she drove away. She did not come to the door. She did not knock. She just observed. Like me. This changed things. Her presence meant he was connected to the outside world. He had a history. Someone cared enough to check. Or needed something from him. Her watching was not concerned. It was strategic. She was waiting for something. I could feel it. After she left, the air felt charged. The quiet street felt like a stage. And there were more actors than I had known. I decided to learn his name properly. Not just from mail. I walked to the neighborhood directory. The little metal box by the entrance to the street. It listed owners. Arthur V. Bell. That was his full name. It meant nothing to me. I typed it into my phone later. Hesitated. Deleted it. That was a line. A serious line. Searching for someone online is different from watching. It is active. It leaves a trace. In your mind, if not on your device. I put the phone away. I did not need to know. It was better not to know. The seasons turned again. Summer heat pressed down. The air was thick. The beige house kept its curtains drawn. It must have been an oven inside. But Arthur did not open a window. He did not use an air conditioner. The house was sealed. A tomb in the heat. I worried about that. A person can die from heat. I knew that. But he had survived winter. He would survive summer. He had a system. He was resilient. In a brittle way. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was loud. Insistent. I rarely had visitors. My heart jumped. I went to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was the woman. The one in the business suit. Up close, she was younger than I thought. Maybe 30. She had a sharp, anxious face. She knocked again. I opened the door. Just a chain's width. Yes. Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Arthur Bell across the street. Have you seen him lately? Her voice was brisk. Professional. But underneath, it was a thread of strain. I see him sometimes, I said. It was not a lie. Lately, like in the last week. I thought. I had not. Not for 2 weeks. Not since the last grocery delivery. Not recently, I said. She nodded. As if I had confirmed something. Do you know if he's okay? Has anyone been to the house? I saw a grocery delivery, I offered. Right, he orders those. She bit her lip. She looked at his house. It's just he's not answering any calls or emails. He's missing deadlines. Deadlines. He's a writer, or he was. He has a contract. I'm his editor. My name is Clara. An editor. That made sense. The quiet occupation. The ability to hide. I'm sure he's fine, I said. The words sounded hollow. Could you let me know if you see him? Actually see him. Here's my card. She slipped a white card through the gap. I took it. Clara Ovens. A publishing company. An email. A phone number. Okay, I said. Thank you, I'm just concerned. She gave me a tight smile. She walked back to her car. She drove away. I closed the door. I looked at the card. It was warm from her hand. I had been drafted. Now I was an official watcher. I had a role. It was small, but it was a role. I put the card on my kitchen counter. It sat there, a white rectangle on the dark wood. It represented a connection, a bridge from my silent observation to the outside world. I could call Clara. I could tell her he was thin. He only comes out at night. He listens to talk radio. This information had value now. To someone. But I did not call. I did not email. I left the card there. A decision postponed. That night, I watched the house with new intensity. Clara's concern was professional, but it was also real. He was missing deadlines. He was not answering. For a writer, that is a kind of silence louder than no sound. I wondered what he wrote. I imagined quiet books. Philosophical books. Books about silence, perhaps. The irony was not lost on me. I saw a light go on upstairs. Then off. Then on in the hallway. Then off. A pattern of lights. Like a code. Or someone packing through rooms. Turning lights on and off as they went. I watched until my eyes grew heavy. I went to bed. The card was still on the counter. In the dark, I thought about Clara. She had a life. A job. She was active in the world. She was trying to reach Arthur. To pull him back. I was just watching him sink. There is a difference. A moral difference. I felt that difference in my bones. It was uncomfortable. A few days later, the police came. Not for Arthur. For me. Well, for the neighborhood. A young officer knocked on doors. He asked about a missing dog. A small terrier from 2 streets over. I said I had not seen it. He was polite. He was about to leave. Then he paused. He looked across the street at Arthur's house. What about that house? Anyone home there? I think so, I said. They haven't seen the dog either. I couldn't say. The man who lives there keeps to himself. The officer nodded. A lot of that these days. Okay, thank you, ma'am. He left. He did not go to Arthur's door. He just got in his car and drove away. Another opportunity missed. I could have voiced my concern. A subtle concern. I could have asked him to check. But I did not. The moment passed. The police car turned the corner. The street was quiet again. I had chosen silence again. It was becoming a habit. Summer faded into a humid autumn. The oak tree turned brilliant red. It was a beautiful contrast against the beige house. A violent beauty. I kept Clara's card. I did not call her. But I thought about calling her. That was something. Wasn't it? The thought is not the action. But it is a precursor. A rehearsal. I rehearsed the call many times. In the shower. While washing dishes. I would say he seems frail. But functional. I would say I am concerned, but not alarmed. I would ask what he writes. I never made the call. Then the packages started. Not grocery deliveries. Boxes. Brown cardboard boxes. Left on the porch by delivery trucks. They would sit for days. Sometimes a week. Arthur would eventually retrieve them. Late at night, I would see the porch light flick on. The door would open. A shadow would dart out. Grab the box. Retreat. The door would close. The light would go off. It was a swift, efficient operation, like a nocturnal animal gathering food. The boxes piled up. He did not open them. He just brought them inside, unopened. What was in them? Supplies. Books. Things he had ordered and then forgotten. Or things he needed but could not bear to face. The unopened boxes troubled me. They represented a break in his system, a failure to complete a cycle. You order something. It arrives. You open it. You use it. That is the circle. He was stopping at arrival. The circle was broken. One box sat for so long it began to decay. The bottom grew damp from rain. It sagged. The cardboard turned dark. One morning it was gone. He had taken it in the night. A ruined box. Full of ruined contents, probably. Why take it in at all? Why not leave it for the trash? Because it was his. That was the only answer. His to acquire. His to neglect. His to finally claim. Even in its ruined state. There was a loyalty in that. A sad loyalty. Clara came back. She did not come to my door. She parked her car. She walked right up to Arthur's house. She knocked firmly. "Arthur, it's Clara. Open the door, we need to talk." Her voice carried across the quiet street. It was clear and sharp. I stood behind my curtain, watching. She knocked again. "Arthur, this is serious, please." She waited. She tried the doorknob. It was locked. She took out her phone. She called. I saw a light go on upstairs. A phone ringing inside. A blue glow from a screen, maybe. He was there. He was ignoring her. She called again. The light went off. She cursed. A soft, frustrated sound. She kicked the base of the porch step. Then she turned. She looked directly at my house, as if she knew I was there. I stepped back from the curtain. My face flushed. Had she seen me? I waited a minute. I looked again. She was back in her car. She was crying. I could see her shoulders shaking. She put her head on the steering wheel. Then she straightened up. She wiped her face. She drove away. She never looked back. That scene stayed with me. Clara's anger. Her tears. Her defeat. Arthur was hurting someone. Actively. By his silence. He was not just a victim of his own circumstances. He was causing pain. This was a new thought. A disturbing one. Before he was a closed system. A self-contained unit of suffering. Now he was a source. His silence was a weapon. A very quiet weapon. But a weapon nonetheless. I felt a shift in my sympathy. It cooled. Hardened. I began to watch with less pity. More analysis. What was he doing in there? If he was not writing, what was he doing? Watching television. Reading. Staring at walls. The radio was always on. That murmur of voices. Maybe he was listening to the world. A world he refused to join. He was a listener. Like me. But I listened from a place of choice. A comfortable chair. A warm house. I could step outside any time. Could he? Or was he trapped? By fear? By guilt? By something else? I did not know. The thumping sounds returned. Not just at night. Sometimes in the afternoon. A series of thumps. Like someone moving furniture. But slow. Dragging. Then a period of quiet. Then more dragging. What was he rearranging? Why? The sounds were sporadic. But they happened enough to form a new pattern. Noise as part of his silence. A contradiction. I noted it on my calendar. A small T for thump. Then came the night of the open door again. It was October, a windy night. Leaves skittered down the street. I heard a banging, a repetitive metallic banging. I looked out. The screen door on Arthur's house was loose. It was banging against the frame. The main door behind it was closed, but the screen door was open, swinging. The wind would catch it. It would slam, then bounce open, then slam again. The noise was awful. A sharp protest in the quiet night. I waited. Surely Arthur would hear it. He would come down and secure it. 10 minutes passed. The banging continued. No lights came on. No shadow appeared. He was either asleep, or he was ignoring it, choosing to endure the noise. That was a kind of madness. To let an irritant continue when you could easily stop it. Unless you could not stop it. Unless leaving the bedroom was impossible. That thought sent a chill through me. I put on my coat. I went outside. The wind was cold. It whipped my hair. I crossed the street. The banging door was louder now. A frantic sound. I climbed the porch steps. I grabbed the screen door. I held it still. The banging stopped. The sudden silence was a relief. I looked for a latch. There was none. The hook was broken. It dangled from the frame. I needed something to tie it with. I did not have anything. I could not just hold it all night. I looked at the main door. The solid wood door. It was closed. Locked probably. I had an idea. I could hook the screen door to the porch railing. There was a loose piece of wire there. From an old hanging basket. I bent down. I pulled the wire free. It was stiff. My fingers hurt. I managed to twist it around the door handle and then around a railing post. It held. The door was secure. It would not bang. I had fixed it. A small act of repair. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Then I looked at the main door. Through the glass of the storm door, I could see the wood. And in the center of the wood, at eye level, there was a smudge. A dark smudge. It was about the size of a hand. It was not there before. I was sure of it. It looked like grease. Or dirt. But it was shaped oddly. Like fingers had pressed against the glass from the inside. And slid down. Leaving a mark. I stared at it. The wind moaned. I stepped back. I went home. I did not look back. The next morning the wire was gone. The screen door was closed properly. The hook had been repaired. Or replaced. The smudge on the glass was also gone. Wiped clean. Arthur had fixed it. After I fixed it, he had undone my repair and made his own. He had cleaned the glass. He had seen my wire. He had seen my handiwork. He knew I had been there. Again. This was a communication. A silent one. He was saying, I do not need your help. I can fix my own door. The message was clear. Stay away. I felt a hot flush of embarrassment. And then anger. I was trying to help. In my own way. He had rejected it. He had erased it. Fine. I would stay away. I resolved to truly stop. To erase him from my mind. To live my life. I took down the calendar. I threw it away. I moved my chair to the back of the house. I focused on my own routines. I read more. I called an old friend. We had a pleasant conversation. I did not mention Arthur. I did not mention the beige house. I talked about the weather. Books. Trivial things. It was nice. For a week I succeeded. I thought less about him. The pull lessened. I felt free. Then I saw the ambulance. It was a Tuesday morning. Just after dawn. The ambulance pulled up quietly. No siren. lights flashing silently. 2 EMTs got out. They went to the door. They knocked. They waited. They knocked again. They tried the doorknob. It was locked. They spoke to each other. One went back to the ambulance. He returned with a device. A small black device. He used it on the door. I heard a click. The door opened. They went inside. My heart was a drum. This was it. The end of the story. He was dead or dying. They had been called. By whom? Clara, maybe. Or a doctor. Someone. I watched. I did not go outside. I just watched. They were inside for 15 minutes. Then they emerged. They were not carrying a stretcher. They were not rushing. They walked calmly. They closed the door behind them. It did not lock. It stayed slightly ajar. They got in the ambulance. They drove away. Just like that. They left. The door was open. Again. I waited for Arthur to come and close it. He did not. The door remained open. A half-inch gap. All day. No one came. No sound. No movement. The open door was an accusation. It said something is wrong. Very wrong. The professionals had come. They had left the door open. That was not normal. That was a sign of something. But what? I wrestled with myself all afternoon. To go or not to go. To call or not to call. I picked up Clara's card. I put it down. I picked up my phone. I put it down. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. The open door became a dark line in the fading light. I made a choice. I would go over. I would close the door. One last time. But this time, I would call Clara first. I would tell her about the ambulance. That was my plan. A good plan. A responsible plan. I picked up the phone. I dialed Clara's number. It rang. And rang. It went to voicemail. Her professional voice asked me to leave a message. I hesitated. Clara, this is Evelyn from across the street. Something happened today. An ambulance came to Arthur's house. They left the door open. He hasn't closed it. I'm concerned. Please call me back. I left my number. I hung up. I felt better. I had taken action. I had reached out. Now I would wait for her to call back. Then we would decide what to do. Together. I waited an hour. She did not call. The door was still open. Darkness was falling.